Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. Morning, everyone. Good to see you all. Thank you very much for coming to this session, which is probably a bit of a kind of anti-technology session. I don't want you to think that I'm anti-technology just because I happen to be anti-technology. But what I wanted to do in this short presentation is share 10 lessons which I've come across because I've been in the industry for about 8 million years and am genuinely very, very old and struggle when it comes to anything like technology. I am also, just to address any issues, I am a male. I have two things to do. I have to hold a microphone and a clicker. This is called multitasking and is something that men are naturally not very good at. So, I want to share some thoughts with you about you guys using technology at your events and with your clients, and whether you have any issues that you might need to address, and see if we can understand what those might be. So, let me just throw a few thoughts at you. The first thing is, really good news, we all get older. Yeah, sorry, there's no alternative to that. I have a sea of young faces here, but we all get older. And one of the things about getting older, and I'll come up with some reasons why, is technology leaves us behind. Technology moves at a pace that some psychologists believe we are unable to cope with. So therefore, there is a challenge about how we deal with technology. Just borrowed my mother for this. And one of the issues is that this is quite an unusual time in history because it's the first time in human history when we have 4 distinct generations in the workplace. Now, you may have heard people talking about the different generations. Generation X, Generation Y, Z, the millennials. I'm something called a baby boomer. Apparently, all to do with the fact that my grandparents survived the war and rushed back after D-Day to have sex, which led to my parents, and that led to me. Celebration all round. That makes me incredibly old and still working. The point is there are a lot of people out there like that. And what happens is you get old and technology leaves us behind. But we try, in most cases, to keep up. It's a bit difficult. This is my approach to trying to persuade my mother how she can manage the remote control without having to constantly call me and get me to come and fix her TV. People want to know how technology works. Now, I could be completely wrong, so I think what we're going to do with my colleagues over here, we're going to have an incredibly interactive survey. An incredibly interactive survey. There we go. Hope you can all see that. So I'd like you to think about yourself, your company, I know I have young people here, or your clients. So, event technology. How are you? Oh. So totally on board, doing well at absolutely no one. Fantastic. Keen. I like the idea of keen. That's half the people who are keen. Hope you can see that. Oh, reticent. Reticent but amenable. In other words, if we can persuade them. Okay, no one's resistant. Okay, really? Are we going to say our clients are clueless or our colleagues are clueless? Okay, oh, there's 2 more people still to vote out there. Finally. Right, okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I think that's actually quite an interesting find. So, what it suggests is that your organizations, your colleagues, your clients are quite keen on technology. So one of the things we need to think about is how we get them to engage with it. That might be a bit of a challenge. Okay, can't do much with the clueless ones except maybe find a new way of doing things. So, one of the things we have to do, think about your different audiences. And I hope you can see this graph all right. This is a wonderful marketing graph that breaks out the people that you're going to be dealing with into different categories. And we do effectively talk about 2 different groups. The early adopters, people who love technology, and they will buy anything. Apparently, when Amazon announced they had a new product, they sold 10,000 of something that was going to be called the i whatever. It was the iWatch, but people who didn't even know what it was going to be bought it because it had an i in front of it. These are the early adopters, but please note they make about 15% of your audience. Everyone else is down here. They want to see worked solutions. They want to know that the technology is going to work, and then you have this big chunk of people called the laggards. Laggards are out there. They're like me, they're like my mother. So, here's one of the things you need to think about. You've all been, no doubt, to many, many events, and what happens is someone, usually a bloke, usually with very trendy glasses, usually with a black polo neck shirt, comes onto the stage and tells you what the future's going to look like. They're futurists or futurologists or mind readers or whatever fancy name they use. We love them at events. We love having these people come along and tell us what the future looks like. They're all going to tell us that 20 years from now, meetings will involve us all sitting around on giant beanbags, taking drugs with a USB port shoved up our fundament, where we can all just absorb lessons. Not going to work. Couple of great predictions. This is a good one. We don't like their sound. Guitar music is on the way out, said some ex-employee of Decca Records when he was confronted by a group called the Beatles. Yeah, whatever happened to them. Or how about this one? It's all very well to say back in the 1940s that there's a world market for 5 computers, but not when you're the head of IBM. Okay? The futurologists, the predictors, all these people who tell us about things get it as wrong as often as they get it right. So when people tell you what the future's going to look like, you have every right to be cautious, and the people you're working for have every right to be a bit reticent about it. So, one of the things I would urge, I said, forget about technology. Let's get the language right. How about this? Put your hand up if you all turned up today and went to registration. No, you didn't, because you were already registered. You went to check-in. You didn't go to registration. So one of the issues is, if you want people to embrace technology, get the language right. Okay, you registered online. When you turn up for your flight, you don't register. You've already registered. You're checking in. Let's use language that people will understand and a process that will probably mean something to them. Now, going back to all these issues about why our clients and our colleagues are a little bit reticent. They're frightened. They're frightened of technology. They're frightened of this kind of thing, having to do 2 things at the same time. So, there is a wonderful acronym that talks about fear. People are frightened of things going wrong. They're frightened of threatening audiences. They're frightened of technology. They're frightened of forgetting their words. Standing up on stage is one of the biggest fears that anyone can ever face, even when confronted with a lovely audience like you. Things very rarely go wrong, but people are frightened anyway. What happens is they have false expectations. They believe they will actually happen. That is what fear is. So, your role as an event guru and a technology expert is to understand and address those fears. Don't just go, oh, don't worry, it won't happen. Understand, because that's what fear does. You know, the monster under the bed isn't there, but if people think it is, it might as well be. So, if you don't believe the research, I'll just share a couple of things with you. 3 years ago, some very bright and very clever people did a very in-depth research report about the use of online and virtual events. And they came with all sorts of insights. I'm just going to share a couple with you. They very kindly asked me to come along as the person who would try and make it all human, because I didn't understand technology. The first thing was this fear. Technology lets us down. Things go wrong. You can be on stage and the microphone fails, or the AV fails, or this technology fails. Things go wrong. And then what happens is you feel up on stage, naked, exposed. Now, the reality is, if it's ever happened to you, you have teams of experts like I have on my right, your left, who make sure things don't go wrong. And actually, most people, if things go wrong, are pretty competent at dealing with it, and audiences are quite understanding. I think the technical expression is, shit happens. Get over it. So, it's understandable that people are a little bit frightened. Go with it. And when people say they don't understand the technology, they won't understand about the fact you're going to Skype in a speaker from a different country. They're probably exactly the same old farts who are talking to their grandchildren on a different continent every weekend. Help them understand it by using technology and language that works for them. Now, this is probably something that's more real, but I'm going to mention it anyway. What happened was, when we undertook the study and we asked people why their organizations were a little reticent about embracing this idea of online and virtual and hybrid events, they said, well, the trouble is, If our audiences can be watching us from their homes, their fireplaces, their baths, their telephones, wherever they are, why should they come to our event? And I think that's a very, very natural fear. I can put your mind at rest by telling you that the research shows that when you start taking your events online, when you do it properly, you are more likely to get more people turning up in future years because they realize what they've missed. And actually, the people who watch your event online will probably never come to your event anyway, because there are too many challenges in their way. If you take some of the big events from our industry, so if you think about Sapphire, which is organized by SAP, they have about 16,000, 17,000 people who turn up in person and about 50,000 people who turn up online. So it's not cannibalizing, it's growing your market. But this is all part of the technology sector for the events. Your colleagues, your clients who are saying, we don't want to do events online or put our events online because of this. And I think one of the biggest concerns for some people about not embracing technology and doing all the things that are being seen here is what happens is if I give you the power. You know, audiences are scary. Even people like as lovely as you. You know, you could be scary. You might be smiling now, but you're all ready to have your revenge. I'll give you a chance. We'll see if this is right. Are we ready for some interaction? Well, they've gone home. See, I bigged them up big time here. Ready? Okay. So, here I am. I'm on all the dating apps, and I'm not doing very well. So I want you to just use your judgment about how I should be listed. There we are. A coffee, a dinner date, a one-night stand, a long-term relationship, or major surgery. Okay? What should I be listed as? Okay, it started off so well. Oh. Okay, this is going far better than I thought. Okay, those of you who put either a one-night stand or a long-term relationship, clearly you need some professional help, but if you'd like to give me your business card, I will make sure it is passed on to the appropriate authorities. Well, fantastic. I am deeply flattered. There is no way I would have thought I would get that response. And that's the issue. When you give your audience power, you don't know what to do with it. There may be the results that you don't expect. I haven't actually prepared for that. I thought you'd all come up with huge abuse. You haven't let me down at all. So, there we are. Thank you very much for that. So, thought about technology. We looked at the figures right at the start, and you talked about people who are resistant. What do you do about people who are resistant? Well, you have to find other ways to get the message across. Okay? Don't get mad with them. You know, I think about my poor mother who I was trying to explain to her because she was very upset. She wanted to watch The Lady Vanishes, a very classic 1930s film. She was there with her DVD in her little hand. She could not find out how it worked. I had to explain that her great niece had actually taken her DVD player to be repaired and she was trying to put it in the toaster. These are the kind of things that happen. Do not get mad. My mother is 91. So, use your research. The research is all around you. We'll take something like event apps. You might be trying to get your organization to use an app for an event. They might say no. Look at the research. Here's some research that was actually done by these fantastic guys. So, number one reason for using an app at an event is because you want to engage your attendees. 4 out of 5 people who use an app tell you that. So what's the take-up of an app? Well, you could argue that 3/4, 3 out of 4 people is pretty good. But if it's only 1 out of 2, that's a lot of people who aren't actually getting the best out of the event. And then, here's a thought. 3/4 of people don't actually see any benefit after the event for using the app. That's fine if everyone just goes and deletes it without an issue. But what you have to do is think, if you've got that data, how do you use it? How do you amend it? How do you think, well, what are we going to do after the event to capture people's feedback? And then we know the reason why. So here's what you need to do. 1 person in 3 refusing to use an app thinks they're too expensive. You just need to do cost-benefit analysis. There's enough information out there. Lack of internal buy-in, 1 in 4. That means everyone in your company who just likes to dabble in the event and says they don't get it, kick them out of the meetings. And you need to prove value. There's plenty of evidence out there that proves the value. So, what's really going on? What's the issue behind people struggling with technology? Well, this gentleman, the late, great Douglas Adams, author of fantastic books like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, pretty much had it sussed. So you might like to look at the people in this room and look at their ages. I'm not going to ask. So this is the thing. If it's around when you're born, you simply don't question it. So I was watching my 4-year-old niece, great niece, the day before yesterday, going up to a big screen TV and swiping it like this, wondering why the picture didn't change, because that's what she's used to. It's normal. Okay? If it's something that happens, there we are, between the age of 15 when your hormones are raging and 35 when you're thinking about your pension, well, it's exciting and it's revolutionary. If you're talking to people, if they're over 35, anything you show, they just regard as witchcraft. Understand that. You have to find different ways of getting the message across. So, if you want people to grasp all the technology here, think of some of the people who you work with. If you brought them round here, their eyes would be bleeding at what technology is on offer and what can be done. But you have to be sympathetic to them, and you have to forget the technology, and you have to think about telling them stories. So here we have, this is a lovely little kiosk from Sprinter. Great, fantastic, very friendly, very interactive, very user-friendly. But it's a piece of technology, and some people will go, so what? So the pitch is not this is a great piece of technology, the pitch is it saves time. You can have these sited at an airport, you can have these sited in a hotel. Why do you have to wait for people to come to the event? Think of the data that you capture when people come up and do these things. Think of the engagement. People talk about wanting to be engaged at events. You don't engage with a piece of technology, you engage with the people. So, what happens is you start to reuse the people. You save a lot of money. You get these things sponsored. They're business opportunities. You put your staff onto other resources. You have them engaging with the customers who come to your event, because that's what they are. All your resources are better allocated. And you all know what ISO 20121 is, don't you? Thank you for nodding with great honesty. ISO 20121 is the standard for running sustainable events. Okay, the international standard for running sustainable events. So I'm sure you're all sitting there and you've got your reusable cups and everything else. That is the official standard. It is how you run events without them costing the earth. If you're not familiar with it, look online and look at the abbreviated summary, because the actual document itself is very worthy and utterly boring. But you can actually get away with a lot of things just by saying to people, when they come up and they say stupid things like, oh yes, what we really ought to do is give everyone some squidgy ball that we've just imported from a Chinese sweatshop, you can go, oh, what a great idea. But that would conflict with ISO 20121. They'll just nod wisely. Remember, this is what's known now as the experience economy. Okay, so this is what happened. We want to engage with people. We want them to have experiences. This is what technology is about. No one cares about technology. They care about what it does for them. It's about, as the expression used to be, sell the sizzle, not the sausage. Okay, if you have to ask what JFDI is, don't ask. Okay, just do it. So my recommendation to you, if you have, 50% of you said you have clients or colleagues who are willing, they're just a bit reticent, then let me share 2 of my favorite quotes with you. There we are. There is no failure, there is only feedback. Whenever I used to do a little bit of DIY, and my wife would look at me and she'd look at the mess, and she'd look at me with her jaw dropping at the chaos I'd caused, I'd say to her, there is no failure, there is only feedback, which explains why I'm on dating websites. But you have to try these things. Things will not necessarily give you the results you expect, but they will give you results. And here's a great good one to think about. Just don't ask. Just get on with it. it is better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Just say to people, well, of course we assumed we were going to do on-demand badging, we weren't going to print everything out in advance. Why else would we do such a thing? And they'll go, oh yeah, fair enough. Okay, don't ask. If you wait for permission, you'll never get anywhere. And I'm going to leave you with one other thought, if I may, and there are some questions coming in. What I would say is you have to, if you're going to do some technology, do it wholeheartedly. Someone wisely said, you can't leap a chasm in 2 steps. And so I will give you an example. I'm currently doing some work with a company. We help them with their event registration. They have some of the fantastic software that you see here for print-on-demand badges. But some senior person, probably older and fartier than me, said, oh no, I'm a bit worried about it, it might go down. Can we print all the badges off the night before? My answer was, and then I realized they're a client, so I said, well, it's not really a good idea, but they insisted. So we printed off 500 badges. We put the badges in the lanyards. You've all worked with lanyards. You know what they're like. They're like Christmas tree lights. They all knotted. They've all got those little stickers, VIP, speaker, sponsor, knobhead, whatever, put on the bottom of the badge. Then those little metal tags that you have to put on. They did all these. You know what happens. The first person who turns up, some eager person's scrabbling around for their badge. They're all over the place. You cannot do it. You cannot be a bit pregnant. You cannot do a bit of technology. You do it properly. So, a fantastic example. If you are an incredibly popular, although pretty repulsive, pop star, what you don't do is disguise yourself like that, Justin Bieber. Do it properly or don't do it. So there you are, 10 lessons. If you're going to do a bit of technology, do it properly. Okay, I just had a couple. Can you see the questions? Oh, questions! There we are. Thank you very much. Oh, yes, fantastic. Biggest fear we have, I don't have time to learn. Well, my response to that is that sometimes people will say things like, I don't have time to learn. Sometimes I say, don't even bother teaching them. Just get them to watch you do it, and then they'll realize how easy it is. It goes back to the point of don't ask for permission, just ask for forgiveness. A very fair point. Yeah, fear? That's difficult. What you might want to do is actually take them to an event where it's already happening. So again, people talk about coming to events like this to network. If you know colleagues who are in a completely different sector, you could say, can we come to your event and see you using technology? Because that'll put people's mind at rest. How do we identify the best tech to use? Stop it. Don't do the best event tech, because the best event tech is the one that will solve a problem. There's fantastic technology here. I'd love to use it all, but 90% of the time I don't do the right events where I'm going to be able to use it. Don't get technology for the sake of having technology. Get it because it solves a problem. This is the problem. Remember a few years ago we all jumped on Twitter because you had to be on Twitter, and we all had to have an app because you had to have an app. No, bollocks to that. Have something that solves a problem. Forget what it's called. Whew. Right. Stories and anecdotes, fantastic way of encouraging. Absolutely. I don't know who wrote that. It could have been me. Perhaps I put that up. Okay. Right. I'm conscious of time. I think if there are any more questions, they'll be sent to me. You're all far too sensible anyway to do that. If I think that the copies of this presentation will be available. I will not go running off, mainly because I don't run off anywhere now. I'm too old. If anyone does have any questions, I'd be delighted. Otherwise, thank you very much indeed. Those of you who wanted a one-night stand, please leave your cards on the table. Thank you very much.